Hey, BiggerPockets, it's Matt. And so a lot of people talk about the BRRRR strategies. That's the buy, renovate, rent out, refinance, and then repeat method. We've done quite a bit of that in our business, and actually that's how we built up a lot of our portfolio, is doing that. And that's buying a property, using private or hard money, refinancing it using that same funding, renting it out, and then refinancing the property with the long-term bank to just slowly amortize it and pay it off. It's a great way to build wealth, and if you play it right, you can buy the property and renovate it with a pile of money, and then replace that entire pile of money and give it back to your private lender, and if they like you, to do it again and again and again with their money through refinancing the property and having it value out properly when you refinance it, to get all that money back out and giving it back to your lender. And so the key part of that refinance is what we're going to talk about today, and that's getting the property to value at what you need it to value at on that refinance. If you don't do that, then it's going to refinance for a little bit less, and you're going to be left having to pay some money out of your own pocket to pay back that lender, or it's just not going to value at all, and the deal is just not going to make sense. And that's how the wheels come off of the BRRRR strategy, is if it doesn't refinance. That is a key factor of the BRRRR strategy, along with other things. You can't have your contractors go over on price during the renovation phase and the rent out. They're all important, I know. But the refinance phase, I think, is absolutely the most important part, because it's what allows for sustainability and you being able to do it over and over and over again, to pull out all that private or hard money and to give it back, and just being able to repeat and do it over again, right? It allows for that repeating, and that. So here's the three factors that I think are extremely important in the refinance phase, which all relate back to the appraisal. So when you refinance a property, for those of you guys that haven't done it yet, you're going to approach a lender, which is going to be probably a small community bank in your local area, in the area around the rental property, that gets the neighborhoods and is okay lending on rental property in those neighborhoods. And you're going to structure a loan with them. You're going to go and apply and give them all your financials, and then they're going to say, okay, great, your financials look great, the property looks great, looks like you rented it for a good market number, let's go and do an appraisal. And so these three factors are here to get you guys the right number on that appraisal. So we just purchased a property. It was a mixed-use building, and I'm going to use this as a case study today. So for the first factor, this really comes into play. So we bought a property for $80,000. Okay, we put $60,000 in renovations into it. Now this is a mixed-use building, meaning it's got a storefront and it's got an apartment above. When we bought the building, the apartment was leased, but there was no lease contract, no proof of that rent or anything like that. So we signed a lease contract with the tenant at $1,300 per month. And by the way, that's for a 4-bedroom, 2-bath apartment that sits above a storefront. That's pretty good rent for our part of the world. And then the storefront was vacant at the time, and I invested that $60,000 to do a full gut renovation on the storefront, and to do some work on the apartment, and to put a new roof on the property, and to really shore it up and make it a really, really great long-term investment for us. And so that $60K went mostly to the storefront, but also to the rest of the building, to give it a clear certificate of occupancy, and get it all nice and cleaned up. So we invested that $60K, and we ended up leasing the storefront out for $1,000 per month also, and that's under a 5-year lease with rent increases every year. So that's the way that comes out to. So that's $2,300 per month. Okay, that's the project. That's the rental income. This is what we invested. So the first thing that we did is, when we met with the appraiser, and the bank wanted to see this also, we itemized these renovations. So when you're doing, this is the lesson, when you're doing the renovation phase of your BRRRR, right, make sure you document everything. If the work's done by a contractor, make sure that you get an invoice from the contractor that itemizes everything, and it can't just be renovate 123 Main Street, $60,000. It's got to be broken out. What did you do for that $60K? Did you replace the plumbing? Did you replace the electrical? Did you do this? Did you do that? If your GC is only willing to give you a lump sum bid, then I'm not happy with that. I like to see it broken out, to say, like, okay, how much for the framing, how much for the electrical, how much for the plumbing, And this is mainly for the bank to justify it, less for you to beat the contractor up if you're happy with their number. But you want to itemize these things as best you can so the bank sees where you put the $60,000, because they want to see you made the investments in the property. If you hired a bunch of different people, and if you were the general contractor yourself, meaning you brought in the plumber, you brought in the electrician, you brought in the framer on your own, then get invoices from all of them. And for me, we send the bank a template with showing on our calculations where all the money went as well. So that shows the purchase price, the investment, all the investments we made broken down, and then the final rent roll on the building and everything. So a projected profit and loss statement and everything, showing all of our construction as well, all on one Excel spreadsheet. Stuff like that's probably out on BiggerPockets. You guys should check out a lot of the workbooks that are out there on BP and that. So take a look at that after you watch this. The other thing is, for those of you that are handy and are doing a lot of this work yourselves, this is the last lesson in the first lesson here. In the first thing you have to do is make sure that you document the work that you did. And for us, we charge ourselves a management fee to the project for our time and labor that we put into this in managing this renovation. So that's for us. We charge a 10% management fee for managing that renovation, and that's just for my time, for being out on the site, and for my team and managing all that construction with the general contractor. That is real time invested. And if somebody else came in and did that renovation, they would have had to have had a project manager for managing that project. Now, if you guys are out there swinging hammers on the property, you shouldn't be doing that for free. But if you're actually compensating yourself in your own pocket, or you're just doing the work as your equity into the deal, you should show that work as part of the value add that you put into the property, if that makes sense. So you can put in a retail price for, okay, I did all the carpentry, but that carpentry would have cost about $5,000 had I done it, had I hired someone to do that work. It's okay to do it. Those are real investments that you made in the property, and whether you actually paid the money out of pocket or not, to me is immaterial. It's just the investment was made, whether it was through me putting my time in or through dollars going into the property. Either way, you want to show the value of those investments made into the property, and be reasonable, okay? Don't start getting crazy and saying that you did you added a bathroom and that's worth $100,000 in renovations to the property. Be realistic on what these investments are and be willing to back them up, whether it's time or money that got invested in. So you want to break this number down. Break it down. That's lesson number 1. Okay. Now, lesson number 2 is make sure that your appraiser uses 2 methods. There's so many methods you can use to appraise a property. There's something called the replacement cost, meaning they go and calculate what it would cost to literally rebuild that building from scratch. And if it's a historic building, like a lot of the stuff that we do here in New Jersey is, then it might be to rebuild the building with all the wood trim windows that are there and all the trims along the top of the property and stuff. And for those of you that are in historic neighborhoods too, it could cost quite a bit more than what the property's worth to rebuild it. A lot of times this is the way insurance companies value properties. It's not the way we're going to do it. You want to, and appraisers, the way they're going to want to do it is to use what's called the market approach. This is fine, and it works a lot on single family homes. What the market approach says is, okay, you have this 3-bedroom, 1-bath. I'm going to go and look at all the properties within a quarter-mile radius of that property that's sold inside of the last 6 months and say, okay, the average value of a 3-bedroom, 1-bath is around $50K in that neighborhood, or $100K or whatever, okay? That's called the market approach, just looking at the market, and that should be used. And for this mixed-use building, should be used too, but it also should be used based an income approach. And you want to make sure that your appraiser is using, whether it's for a single-family home reno or a reno on a mixed-use building like this, you want to make sure that they're using the income approach for valuing your property, okay? What the income approach does is it looks at this number. It looks at the rent that you're bringing in, and then you want to make sure your appraiser sees all your expenses. Okay, so in this scenario, if we're at $2,300 a month, let's say that with real estate taxes and insurance and utilities, I'm paying $1,000 a month in expenses. That does not account for the mortgage payment, because this is if you guys are ahead of me, I'm calculating the net operating income. I'm not calculating the cash flow. I'm just calculating the operating expenses for the property. So that means my net operating income is $1,300 per month, or roughly, not that I'm on the fly here with numbers, but let's say it's around 14,000. Actually, it's about 13,200 a year. Okay, I may have a little wrong on that. Let's say it's about 13 to 14K per year. Okay, it's 14K a year that you're making on this property. Now, the income approach says that if I have an investment property that's selling at that, how do I value it? Now, you guys all heard of cap rate. If you haven't heard of a cap rate, then look that up on BiggerPockets in the forums. There's some stuff that I've done, and there's a ton of conversations on cap rates. But the way the income approach looks at this is to say, okay, here's my income for the property. I'm making 14K a year in net operating income. What is the average cap rate for this marketplace? Well, okay, if this property's at a 10 cap, then 14K means that if I multiply that by 10, just kind of rough around the edges numbers here, then I'm worth 140K. Okay, neighborhoods that I'm in they're not a 10 cap, they're probably an 8 or a 9 cap, so I'm worth more than this. But still, you use that as an evaluation factor for the income approach. You want to make sure to use the market approach, and this works for any property, just to see, well, this is a mixed-use building. Well, there's one that's with one apartment above and a storefront that sold for $200,000 right down the street 6 months ago. Okay, we'll use that as a value, and we'll also use the income approach to determine what the property is actually making in money as another way to value the property. So that's the second lesson: is make sure they use the market rate approach and the income approach. If they're doing this on a single-family home or a rental or a mixed-use building like this, or an apartment building, or whatever it is, make sure they're using several approaches to value your building. And if they do it the right way, if they're good, they'll take those two and average them. So they'll take the market rate approach and the income approach number, which are going to be different, and they'll average the two to come up with an average value for the property based on those two appraisal approaches. You might have to pay a few more bucks for your appraisal, but it's worth it. That's lesson number 2. Lesson number 3, this goes without saying for some of you seasoned vets out there, but for some of you newbies, and just it may even sound silly to you guys too, but for some, it doesn't. Make sure you meet your appraiser. Meet him at the property. Meet him there. Don't just give him the combo lockbox and say, okay, good luck. Go ahead and appraise it and send me the report when it's done in a week. You want to meet him there because you know all the places that are of high value in the property. Make sure that they know, hey, I replaced that roof, by the way. That's a new furnace. That's a high efficiency furnace, 95% efficient. Did you know that? And give them copies of releases. Give them all your data, and you want to kind of put your selling shoes on and show the property its best light. So give them your leases, give them your financial statements, and give them the tour of the property. And this is your chance to show off a little bit so you can tell them why you think the property is of great value. Don't tell them what you think the property should appraise for. That's their job, and they might look at that as you trying to sway them. So don't tell them any value, even if they ask. If they say, what do you think it should appraise for? Then I'll let you determine that, because you want it to stay an arm's length transaction with your lender and that. But do give them a tour and show them everything that could be of great value. Like for me, we own a couple of small and mid-sized multifamilies, and so whenever those get appraised, I make sure that if there's like a coin-operated laundry in the basement, I make sure that the appraiser sees that, because that makes money, and show it on the profit and loss statement how much money those things are making. And so those are the 3 things. Again, here they are in summary. Okay, make sure you break down your construction cost. Make sure that the appraiser uses a market rate and an income approach for valuing the property. And 3, real simple, meet the appraiser there and make sure they see all the value for the property, okay? You do those 3 things, you'll be able to do the repeat side of the BRRRR strategy, and that's sustainability. That means you can do it again and again and again and again, right? If you don't do that, then your property's not going to value the right way, and you're not going to be able to return all that money back to your private money lenders or hard money lenders, or if you're operating with your own cash, you're not going to get it all back out. You're going to have to leave a little bit behind in every property. So extremely important part of the BRRRR strategy is the appraisal. And again, leave some comments down below. Maybe I left out some steps that you guys use for getting great appraisals on yours. Maybe tell some stories on how you've been able to use these factors for yourself. Look forward to hearing from you. And thanks always for watching, guys, and have a great and profitable week.